Good morning. Welcome to today's presentation, Motivational Interviewing to Promote Engagement in Substance Use Disorder Treatment. This webinar is part of a series hosted by St. Clair County Community Mental Health during the month of September, which is National Recovery Month. Today's session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the CMH YouTube channel for future reference. Please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions and add comments you have at any time during this webinar. And if time allows, we will answer as many questions as we can at the conclusion of this presentation. Our presenter today is Adrian Luckenbacher. Adrian holds a counseling degree from Oakland University and has worked in a variety of settings, including inpatient mental health care, outpatient services supporting both adults and youth in their mental health and substance use recovery. Adrian is currently the Community Relations and Outreach Coordinator for St. Clair County Community Mental Health. In that role, Adrian provides outreach, educational training, and presentations for both staff and the community. Adrian is a MINT-trained motivational interviewing trainer for over 12 years and is looking forward to switching up her roles today as webinar host to webinar presenter. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. Very excited. Like Sarah said, I am usually on the other side of the planning of the Recovery Summit. I have been very fortunate to be involved in the planning of this fantastic event for the past couple of years. And a lot of times I get to host or be moderator and be on the other side. So today's the first time I've been able to be on this side of the screen as a presenter with you folks today. So I'm very excited about being here and looking forward to spending the next hour with you. So like Sarah said, today we're going to be talking about motivational interviewing, and especially in promoting engagement with not only substance use treatment, but any kind of engagement with individuals at all. So we're going to get into that in a few. I have Karen and Sarah both helping me with technology today, which I'm very thankful of. And I'd like to give Sarah a shout out because she did a great job of helping me put my PowerPoint together. I feel like I have the gift of gab, but not necessarily technology. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I wanted to let everyone know that I'm trying to make this a little bit more interactive for those of you who have been on Zoom webinars before and experienced the ability to do polls. We have a couple of polls that are going to pop up. One pretty quickly as we get started, a poll will pop up and you have the opportunity to answer questions as we're sort of talking along, and it shows the result. And it's just a real nice way of having the audience be able to engage, but also for me to really get a feel of some of the thoughts and some of the audience that I'm talking to. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So as I had promised, we are going to start out with a poll this morning, and I see that there are a lot of participants here today. Some names I recognize, some I don't. So I really like to get a feel from folks when I do any kind of motivational interviewing trainings, where you feel you are in your comfort level with MI. Anywhere on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you find yourself with the overall understanding of motivational interviewing to understanding how to use it, maybe not full capacity, but being able to implement it in some of the ways that you interact with other people. And on that scale, 1 meaning, don't know a whole lot about motivational interviewing, really just that it's called motivational interviewing, Adrian. And 10 being, hey, I know a lot. You may have attended some trainings, maybe some advanced trainings, and you might be feeling like, hey, Adrian can sit down and I can go ahead and do this presentation, which is absolutely fine. So where would you scale yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 with motivational interviewing? So I'll give you folks a couple minutes to answer that, and then we'll go ahead and display our results. All right, Karen, go ahead and pull it up and let's see where we're at with individuals. All right, very cool. So it looks like a good amount of our individuals that have come today are scoring kind of 5 and overs. We actually have some 1s and 2s, which is fantastic. And I'd like to go ahead and just let everyone know, no matter where you fall on the scale from 1 to 10, today hopefully will be beneficial for you. If you fall anywhere from a 1 to 3, basically saying, I know the word motivational interviewing and that's about it, the good news is hopefully you'll learn a good amount of stuff today. If you find yourself sort of in that middle, hopefully there are some different tools and skills and strategies that you'll pick up And I always say for the 9s and 10s, like myself, who do trainings on MI very often, that even if you know everything that we talk about today, it recharges the batteries, and recharging the batteries are very important because it's so easy. All of the things we learn and know and understand, especially when engaged with other people, we sort of forget. And this allows the ability for those tools to kind of be back right in our vision, kind of off from the sides and back on scope, to recharge those batteries and be able to apply some of those things that we do. The other thing I like talking about, no matter if you're a 1 or you're a 10, is your level of awareness and willingness. So willingness to learn new things, hear about new things, which you're here being able to do today. And awareness, which is huge, because I use this example in a lot of the different trainings and presentations that I do. A lot of times we're sort of, we don't really are always aware of the things going on around us. I can tell you, until I decided to buy a white Explorer, I really didn't notice white Explorers on the road. I don't know if that ever happens to any of you, that you don't notice things until you put them on your grid or your radar. I knew I wanted to get a car, but I didn't know what kind. But once I decided to start looking at white Explorers, all of a sudden, that's all I saw all over the road. White cars, white Explorers, that's a terrain, all kinds of different things, because my level of awareness was so much higher because it was on my grid. Things like buying new shoes, a new hairstyle, even painting your house or your walls a certain color. You don't necessarily pick up on all of those things until it comes back on your radar. And that's what I'm hoping we do today with motivational interviewing, is taking these things that we know about and are very common and genuine in a lot of our interactions with other folks, but kind of putting that on the scope to be a bit more aware about things. The other things I like to tell folks is that this is like tools for your toolbox today. We're going to talk a lot about different strategies, things to think about. And it's like everyone has a toolbox, right? Some of us might have our big Craftsman heavy duty toolbox in our garage or basement, wherever it is, just chock full of tools. And some of us have that junk drawer in our kitchen that we pull open that maybe has, some duct tape and maybe a pair of scissors and different things. So no matter what our toolbox is and what sizes, the things that you're going to learn today are tools. And the good thing is you can decide whether you want to keep these tools and throw them into your toolbox or not. And some of these skills you might throw into your toolbox and use very often. Some of them you may only pull out once in a while, and that's okay too. All right, so let's talk just very briefly about what motivational interviewing is. It looks like by the scaling for folks, most of you are familiar with what motivational interviewing is. And Miller and Rolnick were the individuals that are the fathers of motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing, the beautiful thing about it is it's collaborative. It's a conversation style. It strengthens motivation and it strengthens commitment for change. And the beautiful thing about motivational interviewing is whether we know what motivational interviewing is or not, most of us do a lot of the skills with motivational interviewing because it's a way of conversing and communicating with other people. It's very genuine overall. It's very natural. And we may find some of these things, wow, I already do this. And one of the goals of today's training is maybe look at some of the things that we may do or already do and enhance and strengthen those skills a bit by looking at different ways or different kind of ways to enhance them. So really thinking about what motivates someone, because motivation and motivational interviewing is really a way of supporting individuals on their journey of change. And certainly today we're talking about substance use and substance use treatment, but any kind of journey of change for individuals isn't so important. The thing about motivational interviewing and motivation is it comes from within, and the person is the captain of their own ship. So there's so many ways to be able to try and motivate folks, but the motivation really comes from within. So what motivates folks for change? One of the things that when I was doing a training once is someone talked about how when they learned about motivational interviewing, someone brought up it's like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. And I never really had heard of that or thought about it that way, but it makes so much sense is that the motivation and the understanding and the ability was actually with Dorothy the whole time to be able to get back to Kansas, but she didn't realize it. She didn't notice it. She wasn't able to pull it out until she ran her journey or went along with things. And she had to meet the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, even the Flying Monkeys and the Witch, to be able to realize what Glenda told her at the end is it was all within you. And those different things just help sort of pull out that understanding of where she wants to be and the direction that she wants to head in. So the spirit and motivational interviewing is really the core of things, and what it is so very important. So motivational interviewing is not looking at someone and saying, what's the matter with this person? Why isn't this person motivated? It's extremely strength-based. So instead of thinking, what's the matter with this person? You look at what matters to this person. What is their motivation? What is what's inside of them that wants to get them possibly in their journey from point A to point B? Is it family? Is it health? Is it money? Is it fear? It could be a majority of different or a ton of different things. And the thing with motivational interviewing, it's really understanding it is not the agenda of myself as the helping professional. It is not my motivating. It is not what I feel like should be motivating this person. It's what the motivation is within themselves. And not looking at like, what is going on with this person? What's wrong with them? Why aren't they motivated? It's what kind of things motivate this person? What gets them motivated? Change isn't easy, right? How many of us have set our New Year's resolutions, and usually by January 5th or sooner, maybe it doesn't work out in the way that we want. And we're just like, well, I didn't meet my goal, so I'm just going to go ahead and give up. Strength-based is really important. Motivation is really important. What is your motivation? It's funny because a lot of people, you hear a lot before people entertain in their houses, maybe throw a graduation party, maybe an anniversary party, or maybe even before they sell their house, people say my house is never in better shape or cleaner or things fixed that I've wanted to get to for so long until I have to entertain or have people over or maybe selling a house. And that's someone's motivation. And that's certainly okay. For those of you that have attended some of my trainings before, I tell the story of my own motivation. And when I was always fairly fit and in shape. And then I find myself going off to Michigan State University and doing what a lot of folks do with, not always making the best diet choices and going where they have, 50-cent pitchers and all of that good stuff. And between habits and different things, put on some weight after I graduated, get out of school, graduate, have kids, gain some more weight, and go through kind of that, okay, time for a journey, maybe to lose weight. And a lot of different things happened. I went to a doctor and they did some tests and they said, oh, your cholesterol is high. And I went, oh, isn't that something that like older people get? But I realized my cholesterol was a little bit high. And the doctor told me, this is some concerns and because of your weight. Was that enough to motivate me to lose weight? And guess what? It wasn't. Should it have been? Well, yeah, a professional, especially a healthcare professional, is giving me hard data saying, this is what's happening. This is what could happen. These are some of your risk factors. And to be honest with you, it wasn't my motivation. I was having to keep up with my kids and getting kind of winded doing that. I had to buy new clothes for my wardrobe, which if you know me, I can't stand clothes shopping. All of these different things were going on that really should have pointed me in the direction to get motivated to lose some weight. And to be honest with you, one of the things that worked, and granted, this was years ago, is my cousin had asked me to stand up in her wedding. And I'll be darned if I was going to spend the amount of money that I did on a dress and not look good and feel good in it. So that dress was actually the motivating factor for me to go on a journey of taking a bit more care of myself, doing Weight Watchers, those types of things. And it really wasn't the motivation of test results or the doctor or having to spend money. Should it have been? Maybe, but my motivation was that dress, and that's what worked for me. So that's what we're looking at in motivational interviewing is what is the motivation for that individual? Some of the things that get in the way though, in the helping profession and any of our engagement with other people, we come from a place of wanting to generally help and be there and be supportive. And what other people that are facing that journey or on that journey of change face are a lot of the things that we see on the screen. A lot of different roadblocks, the blame, shame, labeling, judging, punishing, somebody trying to fix. And as a helper or helping professional, a lot of times we don't intend on doing these things to cause harm or cause these roadblocks. A lot of individuals, when they are in the journey to change with substance use, face this from a lot of people in their life. Certainly face it maybe from their loved ones, from their employers, from maybe the legal system, maybe even from themselves, and probably from themselves. And believe it or not, as the helping professionals, at times, whether we intend to or not, we do some of these roadblocks as well too. We might think, well, I don't blame or shame. Boy, if I did that in my profession, I'd probably get fired. But honestly, we do some of those things. We try to be rushed to be able to fix things. We maybe do some things like judge or punish or say things like, you're ruining your kid's life, or using words they're stigmatizing, like the word addict, or maybe even doing things like giving ultimatums. If you don't stop, you're going to end up in the hospital. If you don't stop, you're going to end up killing yourself. So those types of things are roadblocks to communication. Also commanding, offering advice without asking if someone wants advice first, which we're going to talk about later, threatening, using ultimatums. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to say we're all human and we do the best that we can in communication. And whether we realize it or not, sometimes we do some of these roadblocks, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more as we go. Again, talking about motivational interviewing, it is so strength-based. It is taking the information that the person already knows and those strengths within, and being able to capitalize or help them in their journey with that. So some of these things on here are really important. It emphasizes choice and control and doing so many different things that are able to help them. If we take, as a helping professional or someone wants to help, the view of prescriptive type of conversation, which basically means, and this is nothing against physicians or anyone who writes prescriptions, but if you're prescribing something in the thought of just, sort of like that blanket at prescribing, you prescribe, you rip it off and you give it to the person and you say, here you go, this is what you're going to do, right? So that prescribing method. Again, I went back to my story of the high cholesterol. So I saw a new primary care physician those years ago, and I went in and they took my blood work, and the primary care physician said, okay, well, looks like your cholesterol is high. Here's some things we're going to do. Here's some medications we're going to explore with you next time you come back if it continues to be high. By the way, here's a diet. Here's some paperwork. We're going to go ahead and see you in a few months. Go ahead and make your next appointment when you leave. Bing, bang, boom, out the door I went. Well, didn't go so well. There was no autonomy. At no point did I have any choice or control, or was I even asked, do you want to talk about this? How would you like to get the information on, some of the risks or benefits? What do you understand about the test that we just did? I was not a partner in any of that conversation at all. I actually walked out of there with my head sort of spinning, going, was I even a part of that? And I'll tell you what, never went back to that doctor again, because it wasn't a collaborative environment where I felt like I wanted to work with that person. So why motivational interviewing? Why is it important? Why is it such a good skill and used so often? Well, one of the things is that there's a ton of research that has showed improved outcomes, and we're going to show a slide after that. Really, with motivational interviewing, the key concept is ambivalence. And I want to talk about ambivalence just for a second. Ambivalence isn't digging your feet into something, being, having a deficit or being resistant. Ambivalence is really just feeling two ways about an important change in your life, feeling two ways about something. So it could be something as simple as picking out a new couch or a color for your wall, but it could be certainly someone on their journey when it comes to using substances and change and feeling two ways about a big life decision. And with that, ambivalence and tension a lot of times go hand in hand, because ambivalence about substance use very, very often, of course, causes folks tension, which we can see why and understand. So the key concept is really helping someone and recognizing the fact it's okay to feel two ways about something. It's okay to feel, I really want to stop using, yet this is the only thing that makes me feel comfortable. I really want to stop using, yet this is the only thing that helps me, leave the house and have bravery to do other things. It's okay to feel two ways about things. The other thing about motivational interviewing, there's a few things. There's the spirit, which, to be honest with you, this is about an hour of talking about motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing overall, if you were to attend a basic training, would be about a day or two in length. So we're truly not doing a motivational interviewing training today. We're talking a lot more about some engagement and some strategies. But if you were to attend a basic training, an advanced training, you're going to hear a lot more about the spirit of motivational interviewing, which really entails that acceptance, partnership, empowerment, which is so important, and having compassion and understanding for the folks that you are working alongside or working with. There's also a lot of processes that come within motivational interviewing. Again, we're not going to touch base on those today, but some of them are planning, evoking, really kind of drawing out of the individual, their own story. What is their hope? Focusing and engaging. And engaging is one of those 4 processes actually that we're going to spend the most time talking about today, because especially with individuals that are looking to make changes or maybe on the road to change or thinking about change with substance use, engagement, that very first initial contact with the person is so very important. There are a lot of other skills and strategies MI-based that you can use when you're working with those folks. But again, today, we're really just going to talk about that focus and that engagement. And with motivational interviewing, there's our core skills, which are awesome. Those are those ORs that we've all heard about, the open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. We're going to briefly talk about that today, but like I said, more about the engagement process. So for those of you that like sort of proof in the pudding or like to know more about research and information, this is some research on motivational interviewing and some of the positive things that come out of it. There have been numerous, just so many studies talking about how motivational interviewing really helps in engagement and services. And, I always say motivational interviewing is something that you can certainly use in your professional hat, but honestly, it's just a real genuine good way of talking to anybody that you're communicating to in your life. It's healthy skills and strategies with any kind of, human interaction with anybody else. The outcomes are fantastic. It bases on self-motivation. It certainly improves successes in any kind of services. And remembering that we don't have to be a clinically based trained person to be able to use motivational interviewing, especially in the professional setting. Motivational interviewing is kind of cool because with MI, it was really based on first working with folks that were working on maybe stopping using substances and engaging folks on their journey with substances. But motivational interviewing is seen so much sort of, like I said, proof in the pudding in different ways that it's used across the board. I just read some research not too long ago that's talking about how dental offices are using motivational interviewing. I found a book recently that I didn't even know that I'm very fascinated in, is a book by Rolnick about motivational interviewing for coaches when they're working with athletes as well too. So it's applicable across the board. Out of all of these things in the screen, I can tell you one of my absolute favorites is the fact that using MI decreases professional burnout. And isn't that so important? Because everyone runs the risk of burnout. And in the helping profession, when we are working with others, we definitely risk that burnout just in the nature of what we do in the helping profession. And it doesn't have to be that person that has that one-on-one physical contact. It can certainly be the folks behind the scenes, the clerical supports, the folks running the data and the research and the numbers. But professional burnout is there. And we really want to be aware of not only ways that we can help other people, but we can help ourselves as helping professionals as well too. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of the ways to what's important, I guess, in motivational interviewing. So when we're working with individuals, they really should or need, we encourage them to be able to say what they need to say. And a lot of times when we're working with individuals, many of us work with individuals or vulnerable individuals in, vulnerable populations. Do they always have the time to say what they need to say? Or are they given so much information and told things and directed that they feel like they don't have a voice on what they need to say? Do they feel empowered enough to say what they need to say? The way they need to say it. Maybe they need to say it slower. Maybe they're not ready to say it right off the bat. Maybe they say it in a way that comes off angry to us, but they need to be able to say what they need to say, the way that they need to say it, and feel heard. And we're going to talk about feeling heard. Because the bottom line, and one of the most important things is when we listen, they talk. And we're going to talk a lot about listening today. So when we listen, they talk. When they talk, they discover. We, a lot of times, as helping professionals, of course, like to be fixers. And one of the best ways that I can kind of show that is if any of you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, things like that, and you're in the car with them and you're driving along, and maybe they tell you that someone in their class hit them or pushed them or did something, and we're hearing them talk. A lot of times we want to look at them and say, well, did you tell your teacher? Well, what did you do? Did you let someone know? Did you tell them to stop? We want to jump in very quickly as a fixer and fix the situation. Do we always sit back and allow them to tell their story and be heard, and not all of a sudden start prescribing them things that they need to do, should do, have to, letting them have a voice? Motivational interviewing is really great to use with any populations, and it's a great engagement way. And one of the things I also want to say is not forgetting working with youth and adolescents, because in the helping profession, or the hats that we wear, we think of motivational interviewing as a clinical interaction or strategy that we use with folks. And a lot of times we think of a lot of these things to be used with adults, but we certainly use this skills and strategies with youth as well too. So if you work primarily with youth or you come in contact with youth, please understand that all of these skills and strategies are just as applicable with youth as they are working with maybe the guardians, other stakeholders, providers, probation, things like that. Very important. So how do you start a conversation and what you do? So really for today, we're taking a very, very small snippet again, because we're talking about engagement and engaging folks. And we're going to focus a lot today on the three things of asking, listening, and informing. How do we do these things? Because we all do them on a daily basis, but are we doing them as effectively as we possibly could be? So I'm going to ask all of you guys, I'm going to take a drink real quick, sorry. How does it feel to be heard? Think about it for a second. How does it feel to be heard? I can be heard by someone in the other room while I'm talking, as they're doing dishes, maybe checking their phone, but they still hear me. But are they necessarily listening to what I have to say? So being heard is important, but taking it to another level and asking ourselves, okay, being heard's all right, but how does it feel to be absolutely, or how to be somewhat understood? How does it feel to be understood by others? And it doesn't mean the person that we're talking to has to agree with us or even be on the same page. But that level of understanding really helps, because it helps validate us as a person that we are being heard and we're being listened to. So the next level is we can certainly be heard. Others can understand us. But just because someone's understanding us doesn't mean that we're connected in the conversation. Feeling connected in the conversation is being listened, being heard, being validated. And that level of being connected is really important because it helps facilitate a collaborative, safe, and trusting environment to be able to have some of those conversations with folks that may be more difficult when it comes to change. So a lot of times we're going to talk about, well, first we're going to talk about asking. So we ask questions all of the time to folks that we come in contact with on a daily basis. And really taking some of the motivational interviewing skills and thinking about, it isn't what you ask, it's how you ask questions. And is there better ways, more effective ways? Can we get more bang for our buck, quality versus quantity, when it comes to asking questions? And the answer is absolutely. Some of the ways that we can do this, again, on a more advanced, longer motivational interviewing training, you'd hear a lot more, but open-ended questions are huge. That's one of those core skills and strategies of motivational interviewing. And for those of you that know what open-ended questions are, which most of us do, open-ended questions are those questions that allow more conversation to happen. You can certainly ask a closed-ended question to someone. I can ask someone, hey, did you see your doctor? and I get a yes or no. But I could ask someone, how did your appointment go? And the person will be a little bit more hopefully open and share. The big thing about open-ended questions is you want to facilitate that person to be the talker and the storyteller and to share. We as helping professionals should not be the one that is doing most of the talking. We should be doing the least amount. The other person, hopefully, will be telling their story. And a lot of folks, for different reasons, maybe don't feel comfortable, don't know how to share their story, or maybe they're just not used to being able to share their story or to be encouraged. So asking those open-ended questions really helps someone who maybe doesn't know how to share their own story by facilitating and asking those really good questions in the way that you do. You can ask someone, do you sleep? Or you can ask someone, what is a typical night of sleep looking like for you? Okay, do you use substances? What is kind of the history with substances look like for you? Have you ever tried to stop using before? What is, your history of, working towards not using? What does that look like for you? So you can ask those better questions, because a lot of times if we ask closed-ended questions, we're not getting a lot of good quality in our answers. And another thing that you risk is the second one, which is evoke versus interrogate. If I'm asking someone or talking to someone and I'm actually asking too many closed-ended questions, it doesn't facilitate that collaborative engagement. It actually feels like that person's being interrogated more often. Well, did you see a doctor? Did you show up? Were you on time? Did he talk to you about your medications? Did he let you know that you needed a blood draw? Did he schedule your next appointment? Back-to-back closed-ended questions without any reflection or open-ended often feel like an interrogation. And whether we know it or realize it or don't realize it, it's like almost you can see someone's earlobe sort of closing a little bit. And that collaborative, safe environment for them closes off. And their ability to sort of share, which leads into exploring their own motivation for change, dwindles. And we want to help facilitate that and not snuff it. Be aware too, when you ask questions for individuals. So maybe as you're meeting with the person for the very first time, maybe it's the first phone call, maybe you're engaging them into some sort of services or help or trying to offer them information. Be aware of leading questions. Leading questions do not allow a person to tell their own story. We're almost telling the person what to say and how to say it. Well, you don't want to use anymore, do you? So I know you've thought about how that's impacted you. I'm almost putting those thoughts to them. We want to ask, have you had thoughts? Have you thought about how that's impacted you versus, I know you've thought about it before. So be aware of those leading questions. Another thing is whether we realize it or not, we command in the words that we use. And we can tell someone, you better, you better, you better, those types of commands. But a lot of us are like, I don't command in my helping profession. Again, I wouldn't be very good at it if I did. Well, we do. And we do in subtle ways. And some of those subtle ways is using the word tell is one of those. If I said, tell me about your history of substance use. Tell me, did you go to an NA meeting today? Tell me, what do your parents think about you using? I'm actually commanding the person. And that person may or may not realize it, but what they do is they kind of hear this so much from the environment that goes around them. It's a roadblock between the helping professional and the person that goes up. It's almost like this invisible wall that starts building because the person's hearing finger whack, tell me, tell me. So one of the really easy ways to try and avoid that or not do that or be very cognizant about it is just taking that word tell out. Instead of tell me, did you go to group this week? Did you go to group this week? Tell me, did you talk to your parents about what we said? Did you talk to your parents? So just as taking that word out. Other things that we want to watch for commands and roadblocks, we do this. Sometimes it's very natural in our vocabulary, like using the word tell, is saying things like, well, you really need to look at that group list. So the word need or the word should. Yeah, you really should take a look at the bus schedule. Would you like to take a look at the bus schedule? asking people. So watching words like tell, need, make sure, those are commands and those are roadblocks that sort of take that collaborative relationship and actually damage it a bit. So we want to look at some of the things that we say and how we say them. Reflective listening is one of those core strategies for motivational interviewing, and it's really important. People don't always know they're being heard. They're not always used to being heard. And the fact that someone is able to say, so what I hear you saying is that using, even though it is such a strong coping strategy for you, is damaging the relationship with your children. Allows that person to say, not only was I heard, they're taking the time to listen, and it establishes trust. So reflective listening is such an important skill. We should be listening, but every once in a while, it's important to engage back in that conversation. And when we engage back, we want to let the other person know that we hear them, that we're listening. Also on how we ask. So again, going back to engagement, is asking strength-based questions. And again, this is something that a lot of us fall back on and may not even realize that we're doing because it's a natural way of conversing. Okay, so why can't you do that? That's not a strength-based question. Maybe asking someone, how could you do that? How could you go about doing that? If you ask someone, well, anything else that you can think of? That, whether we know it, is not strength-based. Instead of asking something, anything else? Well, what else? So be able to plant those seeds of that strength-based questions. All right. So that was just a little tiny bit about asking. A lot of things in there, again, it takes a little bit longer to talk about them, but at the end of the presentation today, I'm going to give you a lot of resources where you can find out more information about some of these things, like open-ended questions or different things. So with that, what we're going to move on to is we talked a bit about asking for engagement. Now we're going to talk about listening, because listening is huge when you're engaging with other folks. So I'm going to ask Karen to go ahead and launch the poll. So I'm going to ask you as the participants, what are some barriers to effective listening? And this can be in your personal life, this can be with your professional hat, in different things. And you can actually select on this one multiple choices. So if you feel like 4 or 5 of them are applicable to you, please make sure you click whatever ones are applicable. So what are some of the significant barriers that you have when it comes to really being in the moment to listening? Is it too many distractions in the environment? Like there's too many people around, or a lot of sounds where I'm at, or noises really seem to throw me off? Is it your own agenda? Because when I'm talking to someone, I'm like, I really need to get this plan of service done. I really need to make sure I ask these set of questions. I need to make sure, like, there's these things going on in your brain, or you're thinking, my next appointment's coming really soon. So you have your own agenda in your head and this chatter that's going on where you're not really in the moment with the person. Needing to multitask. This is a big one. Are you doing other things or find yourself doing other things in the conversation, like checking your phone or looking up something? Even some of these things we have to multitask. A lot of folks transport or drive or provide resources for transportation for individuals. You're driving and talking at the same time. So sometimes multitasking is really important. So you guys went ahead and answered that, which is cool. Time restrictions was another thing that we were going to talk about. Are you like, oh, I only have a couple minutes to go? Difficulty with silence, we're going to talk about some. So it looks like for a lot of you, time restrictions is a big thing, which makes sense because we don't have all the time in the world to talk to people. If I was talking to my mother, my sister, or my brother, it'd be different. But in the helping profession, time isn't always on our side all the time, like a lot of times. I like that one too, trying to think about my next question or comment comes up high, which is in too many distractions. So a lot of different things play a role. So let's talk about these a little bit. So when you're listening isn't always something that's very easy because of those things that we talked about on the poll. So, but listening is so important, and listening is so important. It really plants a seed of hope through effective listening. It takes a huge amount of courage for an individual, especially when they're looking at changing habits or things with their substance use, it takes a huge amount of courage to come in for any kind of a contact and appointment and share their story. So plant a seed, plant that seed by being a good listener, being a full listener, be present in the conversation. That isn't always easy because of the things we talked about, like noise distractions or other things going on. Doing things like you can, like minimizing distractions, making sure that maybe if it's all right with the individual, that doors are closed, taking things like putting your phone or things away where you don't have those distractions going. If you know you're meeting with someone in a place that tends to be a little loud, are there options that you can offer the individual to meet somewhere else? Listening is, of course, something that is a physical thing. And we want to be very aware of our nonverbal cues because our faces talk sooner than our mouths do, right? Because I can say, "Ooh, I understand what you're saying." And if I roll my eyes, that's not painting the same picture. So our nonverbal cues, are we sitting back and are we folding our arms, which might come off to the person as I'm judging or I'm impatient? Are we doing things like glancing over to our phone? Do we have our phone in our hands? If we're listening to someone's story, something just as simple as taking your pen and putting it down when you're talking to someone makes a huge difference. Little nonverbal cues like that help the individual get validated, the fact that what they're saying is important to us. So nonverbal cues are very important. Listening is listening. It's not asking questions. It's sitting back and being that person that is fully engaged in what the storyteller is telling us. Silence is an interesting thing. If you're like me, you can probably tell I'm pretty talkative. Silence is not something that I'm very good with. I get a little bit uncomfortable with it. If there is, I want to jump in real quick. I want to ask a question. I want to fill up that space. That is my characteristics, and that's what I feel comfortable with. And it's very important for myself that I remind myself a lot of times when I'm talking or engaging with other professionals or other people that I have to go ahead and close my mouth. I have to sit back and listen. And if there's moments of silence, it's okay. And it's okay to sit through that uncomfort as well too. So when we're talking about to folks and we're engaging with them and we're maybe they're sharing their story and there's a pause, it's okay to sit with them in that silence and not feel so apt to hurry up and jump in. Because a lot of times we do that for our own agenda and our own comfort level. So allowing that silence is okay. And it's very important because it allows the person to gather their thoughts and maybe move to the next story or the next thing that they're going to say without someone jumping in right away. On the other hand, too, is you don't want to be 100% silent the whole time that you're engaging and talking to someone. Small feedback, reflections, maybe at a or a head nod is very validating and important in a way, in a lot of ways, to be able to engage with that person too. Reflection, we had talked about the importance of that in establishing trust. It validates folks. It's very collaborative. And then gentle transitions as well. We're having actually a whole nother slide on that. Gentle transitions are really important. A lot of things get in the way of maybe being able to transition. We all have talked to those folks that maybe are, that's not the best word, but monopolizers that are very, very engaged in a conversation and could just talk your ear off all day long. And meanwhile, you're sitting here going, oh my gosh, my next appointment is here, or I have to get on the road to go somewhere. You want to be able to convey that you're a good listener, but sometimes you have to end the conversation or maybe move on. Or perhaps if someone is so stuck on a topic where you as the helping professional want to help guide them and motivate them down that road of change, maybe doing a gentle transition to change the topic or to kind of change that focus, that's okay too. So some of the effective and gentle ways of bringing sort of that listening to a close, some of the things that you can do is you can summarize what you've understood and suggest sort of a change in direction. You can say, I'm hearing you say that you're really feeling a lot of intense pain about the loss of the relationship, because maybe this is really just the focus all the time is this loss of relationship. And you're thinking, okay, let's I'd really like to help them move in another direction versus talking about this, although it's important. So you can say something. I'm hearing you say that you're feeling intense pain at the loss of the relationship. And it's really hard for you not to think about this person and the pain on a daily basis. If it's okay for me to ask you, now, what else would you like to really focus on your day? I could change that direction. I want to let them know I understood and I hear what they're saying. I don't want to say, well, let's talk about something else. You've been talking about this relationship a lot. I get it. You're upset. Let's talk about something else. We want it to be a very gentle change of direction. Be honest about your time limitations. It's okay to say, I just want to let you know that we have about 15 minutes left. Or I want to remind you that our appointment today is a half hour. Or I want to remind you, what? I really enjoy talking to you. Our trip here is really only going to take about 5 minutes before I drop you off. So be honest about your time limitations. We're human and it's okay. And letting people know that actually helps build that trust, because we're not saying I just don't want to hear you anymore because of these limitations. Acknowledge the value of what you've heard from the other person, which all goes into that reflective listening as well too. All right. So our last poll, we talked about asking. We've talked a little bit about listening. Now we are going to talk about when you have to provide folks information. So this poll here asks you, what are some difficulties that you come into when it comes to providing information to other folks? Because informing is a big piece of our professional hats and other things, giving folks information. So what are some of the things? Is it having to repeat stuff all the time? Is it, as many times as I tell people, they forget stuff that I tell them? It's sensitive information, like it's not difficult. It's kind of difficult stuff I have to tell people or that we have to talk about. Is it because the person, for whatever reason, whether it's mood, emotions, their readiness, they're just maybe not ready to hear the information that you're giving them. So again, you can click on more than one. So let's see what everyone's got to say. Go ahead, Karen. Still coming through. Okay, good. A lot of people have a lot to say on this, and I like that. We give information on a daily basis. Okay, so what are some of those barriers that come up? All right, so a lot of people are saying, yeah, the other person may not be ready to hear the information. Maybe it's difficult information to hear. Maybe it's overwhelming information to hear. So that a lot of times definitely plays a role. What else do we have? Individuals are overwhelmed, right? So believe it or not, them talking to you is not the only thing that they have going on in their lives. And besides talking to you this day, they have a whole complexity of other things going on emotionally, physically, financially, other stuff like that. All right, great. Thank you. Advance my slide. There we go. Okay, so how do we inform? We inform people of things on a daily basis, and we do different ways. We explain things. So sometimes we have to explain to folks a process, a form, what's going on in an intake appointment. We have to explain different groups, different treatment, different medications. Maybe we have to explain something that has to do with something legally. So that's a way we inform. We also have to clarify to folks, right? We may have to break down information to make sure that people understand things. And we also have to offer information. We may have to offer information about different medications, offer information about groups, treatments, even offering information about resources. So there's some really good motivational interviewing focused tips for informing folks. This one is so important to remember. To slow down. The process can be quicker. Individuals are not an information receptacle, right? And a lot of times we're multitaskers. We have our own agendas. We have these time limits, and we don't remind ourselves enough to slow down. And you can tell I'm a talkative person. To believe it or not, I am trying to be very cognizant that I slow down when I'm talking to you today, because this is not my normal cadence of speech. Anybody who knows me, like Karen and Sarah that are helping me out today, are probably laughing in the background because I talk very fast. And I have to be very cognizant of that, because when you don't slow down and when you talk fast, information can't be processed in the same way. Especially when we're maybe delivering information that's very sensitive or difficult. Slowing down for someone is important. So I would say take your natural pace and even slow it down more. Right now, this does not feel comfortable for me because this is not my normal pace. But the information that I'm getting to you right now is important to deliver. So I deliver it in a slower, more deliberate way. Okay. Consider the broader priorities of the individual. A lot of us may feel frustrated, like, what if this they don't get? Why are they not following through? They're going to end up with serious health risks or health problems or get their kids taken away if they don't make this group that they have to go to. Well, maybe there's broader priorities of the individual. Maybe there are things like putting food on the table, paying their rent or their bills, keeping their job, not damaging a relationship that they have in their life, isn't taking precedence over what the goals or the things that we feel they should be doing is doing. So when we're informing someone of something, we want to consider the broader priorities. Positive messaging matters as well too. We don't want to say when we're giving people, well, unfortunately, the only days that we have groups is this days, and I know it doesn't work real well for your schedule. Well, you probably won't want to hear this, but because this happened or you missed your appointment, we can't see you again for so much of time. Well, one of the downfalls of not calling your probation officer, that's not strength-based. We want to be able to take those words out like, unfortunately, you don't want to hear this. We just want to be able to give them the information. So watch for those non-positive messaging. Consider the amount of information you're giving to someone. There are a lot of things like we talked about, like mood. Someone may be anxious, sad, depressed, overwhelmed. And we may feel like this is just general. I'm just telling them about the different groups we're offering. That's a lot of information for someone else who has other things going on. So if we can slow down, if we can offer them things in writing, pamphlets about different things, booklets, brochure, asking them if they're even ready to hear the information today. I may have stuff on my agenda where I'm like, I want to get them going to group. But I might want to ask them, are you ready to have the discussion about groups today? Because it's their own agenda. We want to deliver, of course, informations with care. We want to ask permission. This is one that if I can put up in neon Vegas highlights, it's so important. Think about ourselves. Think about, do we want to just be given information all the time? No, we want to ask. Asking permission is huge. It honors the person. One of the most basic ways we can ask for permission, and one of the examples I give all the time, if you're seeing someone and you're saying, come on back to my office, we're giving them a command. Asking someone, would you like to go ahead and come back now? If we are saying, go ahead, get in the car, I'll drive you home. Would you like to go ahead and get in the car? I'm ready to drive you home. Here's some information about groups and different things that you can do that we have on recovery. Would you like to hear some information about some of the groups that we have? Asking permission is huge, and we don't always do that. A lot of times we come off commanding. So when we're informing and we're giving information to folks and we're giving those types of commands, again, it's not collaborative. And we're going to find that bridge that we're trying to build to help people crumbling underneath us because of some of the ways that we may not be being as effective as we can. Offering choices are huge too. If you are informing someone, you can usually always give them choices. Okay, we talked a lot about things today regarding groups for AA and recovery. You know, would you like to go ahead and take this stuff home and look at it today? Or is this something you want to revisit next time we meet? Don't assume that they want to take the stuff home with them. Would you like to go ahead and make our appointment to meet next right now? Or would you like to go ahead and maybe give us a call back and let us know when you'd like to come back? Offering choices. Also, sometimes when you're giving information, you might want to just talk about what other people have done. So you might say something like, well, you know, in my experience, if you don't mind me sharing, other people that have tried groups out, kind of tried them once just to see what they were like, went ahead and went, and then they decide if they want to continue to go or not. Other people that have maybe had a difficulty with this medication have decided to talk to their doctor about it. So you can do different ways of informing, and talking about what others do is a way to be able to do that. All right, so we are kind of winding down a little bit. I just want to check my clock, and we're pretty good on time. So we're sort of wrapping up. Again, these were just some tools, tips, and strategies that are MI focused and ways to engage folks in any way, but including when it comes to substance use treatment. Some of the keys is that awareness. So hopefully today, with some of the things we talked about, whether you already knew it or maybe it was something new, now you're seeing those white explorers all over the road. So maybe you're finding yourself going, I just said tell. Or maybe you're finding yourself going, that wasn't really a strength-based way to do. Or maybe I didn't ask them permission. Your willingness today is huge. I want to just tell everybody I appreciate you attending today. By you showing that you're willing to hear this information is just a beautiful thing, because that's part of that journey to change, even for us, in the way that we choose to interact with others. This might be some tools in your toolbox that I hope that you feel would be real helpful for you. And with that, I want to give you some additional tools. So if you are interested in motivational interviewing, knowing more about it, there are some resources and different things that I have that I really encourage. There's so many books out there and so many great things, and not all of them have to be by Rolnick and Miller, but there's some really good ones. And these are some of the ones that I recommend. Motivational interviewing, there's a lot in the healthcare professions, helping individuals change and behavior change. All of these are actually on my resource page at the end. There are some great books on helping people change when it comes to addictive behavior. There are some fantastic books. I believe it's the one on the right, is about the healthcare profession. So even working with folks when they're talking about health related concerns. And one of the ones that I found out real recently that I actually ordered yesterday was coaching athletes to be their best, being able to use motivational interviewing. So if you Google motivational interviewing or go on Amazon looking for books, you'll find some great stuff. I have my contact information on here. So if you wanted any recommendations or different things about motivational interviewing, help pointing you in the right direction, please feel free to contact me. The state does a lot of really, really great things. So if you go on to the MDHHS website, they will be able to tell you about some of the trainings and different things going on for advanced or basic motivational interviewing. Honestly, if you do a Google in your area, you'll find trainings. I know here at St. Clair County Community Mental Health, we offer trainings often for our staff and sometimes for folks in the community on motivational interviewing. If you are interested in becoming a motivational interviewing trainer, the state has not offered this in quite some time, but they have now offered a train the trainer training, several of them going on. So maybe you know MI, you like MI, you feel like it really works, and you'd really like to be able to train other people on MI. There's some great opportunities coming up for that too through the state, through MDHHS. Here are some references at the end. These are a lot of the books that I referred to and other things. There's some tip protocols, all kinds of different things from SAMHSA. Really good stuff to really widen the scope when it comes to some of the stuff that we talked about today, because we really just, we really just looked at the tip of the iceberg. So with that, I'd like to just again, thank everybody for joining today. Feel free to contact me with any questions, concerns, comments. Most likely because of the way I talk, I would venture to guess we may not have a lot of time for questions, but I'll go ahead and throw it over to Sarah. So thank you, everyone.
Yep, we are coming up on the end of our time here. I wanted to just grab a few things from the chat. Some folks had asked about the slides being available. We will make those available on our website. It'll be located in the same place that you went to register. So sccmh.org/events. And in that events tab, you can find the Recovery Summit with links to register and the presentation slides from all of our previous sessions. And Adrian, just one question that didn't get answered out loud. Could you just tell folks what is collaborative documentation? You referenced that a few times. I just want to make sure everyone knows that terminology.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. So one of the things that folks may talk about as a barrier of getting in their way of effective listening is collaborative documentation. And that's something that a lot of agencies do. It's a very transparent way of when you're working with someone to complete documentation like progress notes, assessments, anything that you have to enter information, to do it as you're sitting with the individual. So it would be like me meeting with Sarah and me going, okay, I'm going to type everything when she leaves my office. That's not collaborative documentation. It's if I'm meeting with Sarah right now and we're going over maybe a periodic review or some kind of documentation, that I'm actually entering in the information, and it's a very collaborative way of being able to do things very transparent. But a lot of healthcare professionals, including myself, were like, I had to type while I'm talking to people. I can't sit here and listen to Sarah because I'm going to be typing. How am I going to be totally involved in the conversation if I'm worried about entering data? So that was sort of a really interesting way for people to kind of look at what they're going to do. So that's collaborative documentation. Some of the things that I say when you're working with folks is just be really transparent. Part of MI is being transparent and saying, this is, how we do things with collaborative documentation. This is so that you can see what I'm doing. And we can acknowledge that your voice is heard, that you can have input. And with that too, turning and facing our computer and typing and typing and typing without reflecting or validating the other person. Or maybe every once in a while, stopping the typing, turning and looking at the person, and then going back to your typing. Those are all of those nonverbal cues that are very important. And folks may say, I lose that connection, or I feel like I might lose that connection. That isn't the case. If it's something that you need to, have to, important to do in your role that's expected, it's okay. You work with it the best you can to be able to make it collaborative with the person that you're talking to. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, thanks for that. Just real quick from the chat, a couple of people were asking about certificates of attendance and MCVAP continuing ed credits. I just want to let folks know that at the end of this webinar series, at the end of September, all of those credits will be compiled by our training department, and then you will get an email that has one document with all of the credits for all of the trainings you attended this month. All right. And so just thanks again, Adrian, for your time and information, and for all of you for attending today. Just to recap, our presentation is one of many webinars scheduled throughout the month of September. You can still register for any upcoming presentations at sccmh.org. Thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.